Is Boruto poorly written? This is a question that people have tried to answer for a long time. Did Boruto as a story destroy what Naruto built over 700 chapters, or did Naruto do that itself? Is Boruto to blame for the relatively lackluster ending of Naruto, or was the story always going to end with some big alien reveal? Well, these are the questions that we're going to be answering today, because while answering my email this morning, I received my weekly email of a CBR article that whipped me into a blind fury. An article titled 10 Important Naruto Details Boruto Made Irrelevant with Bad Writing. And as any of you who have followed this channel for any amount of time know, I not only don't think that Boruto is poorly written, but fully believe that Boruto is just as good, if not better, than long segments of Naruto. So naturally, this is the kind of article that wouldn't sit super well with me. However, I'm always open to hearing other people's opinions about the things that I love, because sometimes another worldview allows you to understand your own better. And this article is at least well written. Now, as to whether or not I agree with the points, well, we'll have to see. Because today we're talking moments from Boruto that killed Naruto's story debunked. But before we get to debunking anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video every single week, you guys can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We just finished Gaara versus Rock Lee, so my entire reaction to that fight is available now on fourth wall. But before we get into all that, today I want to talk to you about a recurring sponsor to the page, Raycon. If you're looking for the perfect gift this holiday season, I've been using Raycon's open earbuds, and they are so good. I love that I can play my music or my podcasts or my Otaku's Anonymous while in the gym and still hear what's going on around me. I can hold conversations with strangers without worrying about being too loud, needing to take out one of my earbuds, and our conversation gets a backtrack. And right now, they're up to 20% off for the holidays, so get a pair while you can. And outside of the fact that these earbuds don't block out anything, allowing for you to hear the world around you, also incredibly light and comfortable. And I wear them while I'm out on runs or at the gym, and I never have to worry about my sweaty ears pushing them out of my ear canal or them falling out because I'm shaking my head. So what are you waiting for? Hop onto the train with the 3 million other Raycon customers who understand that Raycon delivers the same sound quality as all their competitors at half the price. And if you don't like them, well, they have a 30-day happiness guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Raycon's open ear earbuds are here for the holiday season, and they're selling fast. And Raycon audio products are up to 20% off to help you bring in the holidays the right way. Just click the link in my description or go to buyraycon.com/nchammer to save on Raycon audio products site-wide. Order by December 15th to ensure that your incredible Christmas presents show up by the time you should be giving them out. There's no better gift this holiday season than the gift of sound. So, the intro paragraph to this article, which once again the title of is 10 Important Naruto Details Boruto Made Irrelevant with Bad Writing, is Naruto spent years building logic for its world. Power-ups had consequences, sacrifices stuck, and themes like inherited will and the cycle of hatred shaped how Naruto characters evolved. Already a couple of problems here. Basically everything that just got said wasn't true. Power-ups had consequences? Are we sure about that? Sasuke's repeated use of the curse mark, which was slowly but surely supposed to bend his will to Orochimaru's but never actually did, is that a consequence? White guy using the 8th gate and then not dying. Does that sound like consequences? Naruto repeatedly using KCM1 for longer than he said he was going to because KCM1 opened him up to the possibility of Kurama taking over his body, but that never happens. Does that sound like consequences? And as for sacrifices stuck, Hinata coming out to fight against a Devapath to protect Naruto after he was skewered with black chakra receiver rods and then dying just to be brought back a couple of episodes ago, is that a sacrifice that stuck? While we're talking about it, Hinata dying in the preliminary matches in her battle against Neji, is that a sacrifice that stuck? Yeah, Jiraiya, Asuma, and Neji all died for real, but the 5 Kage who all basically died in combat against Madara all got brought back like it was nothing. Sasuke, after getting stabbed to the heart by Madara, is brought back to life by Kabuto. Naruto, who dies after Kurama is ripped out of him, is kept alive by Sakura manually pumping his heart. Yeah, some sacrifices stick in Naruto, but like, not the majority of them. Anyways, the article continues on by saying, even when Naruto's story got messy, it still treated its biggest ideas like they mattered. The most over-the-top moments still felt tethered to something human in Naruto, and that's why Boruto was such a mixed experience. Boruto's sequel franchise raises the power ceiling and bulldozes the meaning behind the original story's most important details, that acts like the audience shouldn't notice. Yeah, it was Boruto that's singularly responsible for raising Naruto's power ceiling. So the ending of Naruto's story, when Naruto takes 3 Kurama avatars, smashes them all together to make a 3-faced, 27-tailed version of Kurama that is throwing tailed beast ball, Rasen shurikens, that wasn't You know, raising the power ceiling? What about when Sasuke pulled lightning out of the sky and turned it into an arrow? Was that raising the power ceiling? 3 Rinnegan Madara literally generates 30 Chibaku Tensei meteors the size of small countries. Yeah, closer to like large cities, but still. Well, yes, obviously Boruto has scaled up the characters in terms of the power that they hold on to. The actual scale of combat in Boruto is substantially smaller than the scale of combat towards the end of Naruto. Yes, this means that anybody involved in any kind of combat either has to scale like crazy or become irrelevant, but Boruto's combat is more reliant on taijutsu and close-hitting ninjutsu than large swaths of Naruto. But I digress. The article continues by saying, a next-generation story is highly anticipated as Boruto is expected to introduce bigger threats and new rules. The problem is that Boruto often does this by flattening what Naruto has already established. Instead of evolving legacy ideas, Naruto's watered-down sequel overwrites them. The result makes Boruto a franchise that sometimes feels like it's sprinting away from its own strong foundations. The ninja world Naruto introduced to anime fans in 2002 becomes less about systems and scars and more about cosmic mechanic that carried less emotional weight in 2025. Yeah, it's almost like we've come an incredibly long way in several hundreds of chapters of content since this was a story about just ninjas. Also, considering the fact that thematically Boruto is trying to be nothing like his father, it would make sense that the overarching story of Boruto is different from that of Naruto. But to understand that, you would have had to read Boruto and understood it on what is deeper than a surface level. But let's get into these 10 points. These 10 points that illustrate why Boruto's bad writing has destroyed Naruto's legacy. The first point being that Naruto's hard-won piece starts feeling like a brief intermission. And this is a complaint that a lot of people have brought up when it comes to Boruto. Naruto was supposed to be the child of fate that would bring peace to the entire world, and yet here we are in very non-peaceful times. However, what's important to note here is that Naruto was never explicitly confirmed to be the child of fate. Minato believed he was, Jiraiya believed he was, but Jiraiya believed that Nagato and Minato could be the children of fate before he came across Naruto. Not to mention the fact that Naruto did technically achieve what he set out to do. He does create world peace, but let's see what he has to say. The original Naruto series treated peace like a miracle built on sacrifice. Naruto didn't just want to be the Hokage, he wanted to change the structure of the world that created monsters like Pain, Obito, and Madara. Yeah, no, that's all fair and accurate. The Great Ninja War was framed as a turning point where the old order finally broke. Boruto sometimes acknowledges that achievement, but rarely sits with it. What is Boruto supposed to do? Sit with the concept of 20 years of peace? And apparently, yeah, that is what this guy wants. Because he continues on by saying peace becomes a background status update before Boruto's story rushes into alien-level threats. The political aftermath of the Fourth Great Ninja War and the fragile rebuilding of trust are mostly treated as settled. That choice quietly shrinks Naruto's legacy. The story of Naruto's son positions his era as a calm phase that was always going to end once real threats arrive. Instead of testing peace through human conflicts, the Naruto sequel resets the stakes with bigger power. So essentially what's being said here in flowery language is that the author of this article is upset that the conflicts that happen in Boruto don't stem from humans, but rather aliens, as conflict built around the concept of tenuous peace would be more interesting than the concept of conflicts centered around aliens, an extraterrestrial threat. And thus, because we're not constantly having conversations about how shaky the peace that Naruto established is, and that could not be less accurate if you typed it in one key at a time from a mile away with a Barrett 50 cal. What's established in Boruto by the only threat to human society being extraterrestrial literally solidifies to the highest possible degree that Naruto achieved exactly what he set out to do. Yes, is there still conflict on Earth? 100%, but there is no human conflict. And on account of the fact that Naruto had no idea that the Otsutsuki exist until one literally popped out at the end of his story to say that when he was thinking about bringing world peace to the entire ninja sphere, that world peace included protection from extraterrestrials would be insane. Boruto establishes that Naruto did such a good job establishing peace that the only way that potential future conflicts could pop up is from places not named Earth. And this is solidified by the fact that every single time a new big bad threat pops up in Boruto, every shinobi village works together to defeat it. If Boruto was a story about human conflicts that went against the peace that Naruto set up, that would do substantially more to diminish Naruto's legacy for creating peace on Earth. This point is asinine. But it gets worse, because the second point to prove Boruto's terrible writing is that the tailed beasts get downgraded from mystical creatures to plot armor. You know, because the tailed beast never presented as anything even close to plot armor in Naruto, right? Hold up, sorry, 1 second here, getting a phone call. Hey, yeah, sorry, I'm recording. I'm making a fool of myself? Kurama saves Naruto's life like literally a dozen times. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that last clip. But maybe there's some magic to be found behind the fern here, so let's dive in. The author goes on to say that the tailed beasts of Naruto represent more than raw power. They embody fear, the ethics of weaponizing living beings, and the trauma passed between generations. Kurama's bond with Naruto is a central metaphor for turning hatred into understanding. Boruto keeps the tailed beasts in the world, but their narrative weight drops dramatically. The political meaning of tailed beast freedom is barely explored. The tailed beast's place in the new era of peace is not given the attention it deserves. Ah, good. We are so close to understanding Naruto and Boruto, it is painful. We're talking in these couple of sentences here about how Naruto and Kurama's relationship allows us to better understand the relationship between humanity and tailed beasts, turning hatred into understanding. However, just because Naruto and Kurama got along doesn't mean that all tailed beasts got along with all their Jinchurikis. And this is established and displayed multiple times throughout Boruto, where we see that when Naruto tries to reach out to all the tailed beasts, that some of them just want nothing to do with humanity any longer, and they have that right. They were made as protectors for humanity, protectors for the globe, and humanity enslaved them for almost a century. What, do you want an entire arc dedicated to seeing what Kokyo's up to? They no longer want anything to do with humanity. They are free. And to pull them back into humanity's issues when they want nothing to do with humanity would be repeating the very cycle that was broken the second that they were let free. And yet the article keeps going by saying Boruto narrowed the beast's relevance to one big story beat. The tailed beasts feel less like living symbols of history and more like legacy icons. The mythic foundation of Naruto's original world becomes optional background knowledge, not an engine for current storytelling. And why would it be? The tailed beasts don't need to carry the story anymore. They hardly carried the story in Naruto. They were used as infinity stones by Naruto Shippuden to be collected by the Akatsuki to turn into the Ten Tails. Don't sit here and act like you love Isobu as a character. Yes, obviously Gyuki and Kurama play big roles in the story, but the rest of the tailed beasts were so irrelevant to the story they had to make a catchy song to teach everybody their names. And yet the final sentence of this point is it's one of the most notable examples of Boruto inheriting the props of Naruto without consistently honoring the meaning behind it. When in actuality, the highest honor that Boruto could give to the freed tailed beasts is to allow them to be free. Just say you want the tailed beast to be in the story, but don't say that Boruto has bad writing because they're not. But let's move on to the third point, that the Rinnegan's mythic status gets undercut by a fast power reset. Basically, the author is saying that the Rinnegan at one point was the most prestigious thing that a shinobi could have, and yet now it's hardly relevant. They say, exactly, the Rinnegan was presented as an endgame level threat in Naruto. The eye represented the frightening peak of the shinobi world's worst impulses, a power tied to ancient history and world-altering consequences. When Sasuke carried it, the eye wasn't just a weapon. It symbolized his role as a protector who understood the world's darkness better than anyone. Boruto treats that legacy with startling bluntness. I mean, that's not really saying anything, so I don't really have anything to say about those couple of sentences. So let's continue to the second half of the point here, which is that Rinnegans barely matter in Boruto, not because the story finds a deeper evolution of its meaning, but because the sequel needs to rebalance the board. The removal of such a legendary Naruto power lands like a mechanical adjustment rather than an earned thematic shift. A once sacred symbol of Naruto's franchise final stage is handled like a checkbox the story must clear to keep the new generation in the spotlight, and that choice makes the Rinnegan's original mystique feel oddly disposable. Is something that somebody would say if they haven't read Two Blue Vortex. Yeah, does Sasuke lose his 6th Tome Rinnegan? 100%. He gets stabbed in the eye after an exhaustive battle against the strongest enemy that the Naruto universe has ever seen. But mind you, in the battle against that strongest enemy that the Naruto universe has ever seen, the only reason that Sasuke was ever able to land a hit and or survive was his 6th Tome Rinnegan. A 6th Tome Rinnegan that he used in Boruto to be an equal match for Momoshiki, Kinshiki, and even fused Momoshiki. A 6th Tome Rinnegan that allowed him to track down the Otsutsuki through multiple different dimensions. And as the only person who could consistently control space-time ninjutsu, this was the role that he had to be assigned. But yeah, he loses it because Sasuke and Naruto are not the main characters of Boruto anymore. And thus, if they hold on to the entirety of their power, there's no real easily written way that Sarada and Boruto could surpass their parents in power in any feasible timeline. And mind you, this is assuming that Sasuke doesn't get his Rinnegan back, which he probably will. But if you've read literally any of Two Blue Vortex, you would understand that the Rinnegan is not only still very much around, but has also very much thematically evolved, as every single one of the Shinju are able to channel Shinjutsu, like their claw mark abilities, through their Rinnegan. Jura's able to fire tailed beast balls from his. The ability from Mamushi to make clones that lose no power is channeled through his Rinnegan, and thus in order to ensure that Mamushi can be defeated, those currently fighting against him have to destroy his Rinnegan, and all of the Shinju are connected to each other through their Rinnegan, like how Nagato is connected to all of his paths of pain through his Rinnegan. So, you know, a thematic upgrade and continuation of an existing dojutsu. Literally exactly what you said 16 hours ago that Boruto was incapable of doing. But why stop there? Because the next point is apparently that Naruto's ninja strategy gets smothered by god-tier power scaling. Yeah. Blamed that one on Boruto. This point establishes that one of Naruto's strongest storytelling habits was celebrating cleverness. Even when Naruto characters were powerful, the outcomes of fights often depended on teamwork, deception, timing, and sacrifice. Yeah. Maybe in the Land of Waves arc. But according to this author here, apparently the best Naruto battles were emotional chess matches. The series made it clear that intelligence and creativity could rival natural talent. Did it? Did it make that much clear? I'm sorry, remind me, how does Rock Lee do against Gaara? Oh, yeah, I mean, okay, I'm sorry, bad example. How does he do against Kimimaro? I'm sorry, bad example. Does Shikamaru win in his fight against Tamari? No, he forfeits, right? But Hinata beats Neji in the preliminary matches, right? No, she dies. She literally gets her heart stopped. But the Sasuke retrieval arc, Neji beats Kidomaru and Choji beats Chirobo. But Choji only wins in a battle against Chirobo because he literally should have died, speaking of those sacrifices sticking thing. And Neji is described as a once-in-a-generation genius. Kiba saved by Kankuro, Shikamaru saved by Tamari, and Rock Lee is saved by Gaara. But anyways, let's keep going here. While Boruto keeps that spirit in flashes, the dominant tone shifts towards overwhelming power gaps. Once reality warping enemies become the standard for Boruto, tactical ninja combat struggles to breathe. Who's warping reality in Boruto? Yeah, omnipotence has been used accidentally, but mostly at the highest level, we're just seeing Shinjutsu usage, which is just ninjutsu, but higher level. Claw marks are just like flying Raijin, and the Shinju are using tailed beast balls and wood release. But we've axed things like gigantic Jinchuriki modes or full-body Susanos in favor of more grounded combat that uses things like small-scale lightning release and taijutsu, bringing fights back to part 1 of Naruto, which you keep referencing as the greatest time in Naruto. But this point continues on by saying a well-animated fight can still feel hollow if the outcome depends on whose cosmic upgrade activates first. Oh, you know, like maybe Sasuke becoming a 10-tailed Jinchuriki after Madara was defeated? Or Sasuke and Naruto being revealed as the reincarnations of Indra and Ashura and being granted additional powers by Hagoromo? Or Madara absorbing the entirety of the Divine Tree once it was cut down and awakening to his 3rd Rinnegan? What about Kakashi getting DMS? Naruto being saved by his parents' 8-trigram seal? This is not a Boruto problem. This problem has existed forever. The first battle of the end fight between Naruto and Sasuke had them both tapping into abilities that we as readers barely understood. But you continue on by saying that the original Naruto series taught the idea that hard work and ingenuity could defy fate. Boruto's bigger threats often reframe the world into a race of genetic destiny. The old lesson starts to look like a myth rather than a guiding principle. Ah, yes, because it wasn't until Boruto that we began to deal with issues of genetic destiny. I mean, sure, Sasuke was the reincarnation of Indra, who was the child of Hagoromo, and Naruto was the reincarnation of Ashura, who's the child of Hagoromo. And sure, Naruto's father was the 4th Hokage, and his mother the strongest Uzumaki maybe ever. And sure, Sasuke's father was the head of the Uchiha clan, a Monkey Kill Sharingan wielder. His brother was a Monkey Kill Sharingan wielder. And yeah, I mean, I guess Kakashi's father was Sakamoto Hatake, who was said to be one of the strongest ninjas in the history of time. And I guess Tsunade was related to Hashirama, and then Tobirama, who was Hashirama's brother, and he was the 2nd Hokage. And Madara was the son of the head of the Uchiha clan. And oh goodness, I feel like we've been doing this genetic destiny thing for a while, actually. Because there is no way you can point at Boruto and say, oh, I think the genetic nepotism begins around here. Are you insane? It's literally revealed that when Minato comes back to life, he's a perfect Toad Sage. How do you think Naruto figured it out so quickly? Hard work overcomes genetic destiny? Yeah, Naruto's tried to make that its point for the entirety of its 700 chapter run, but it never achieved it. Even Rock Lee, who is supposed to be the living symbol of hard work overcoming talent, is literally established in his fight against Gaara by Kakashi to only be able to achieve the level of power that he has because he must be some kind of genius. With Kakashi literally saying there is no way that hard work could achieve this level of strength. I digress. Let's get get to the next point. The next point being that the Hokage's symbolic power gets traded for convenient sidelining. The author goes on to say that the Hokage's role in Naruto was mythic, representing the Hidden Leaf's village ideals, its strongest protector, the beating heart of its future. All right, to take Wagyu to the vet, and then Penelope pooped everywhere, and then that poop got all over the shirt I was wearing, and then I had to shower with Penelope because we were both covered in poop, and now it's an hour later. Anyways, moving directly forward, the author continues on by saying that Naruto's path to that seat was framed as a promise to every lonely kid who wanted to be seen. Boruto takes a more grounded approach by showing how exhausting leadership can be. The problem is often the story uses that realism to diminish Naruto's narrative presence. And it's like, yeah, man, it's not Naruto's story anymore. I don't know why this is continually one of the biggest gripes of Boruto haters. They just whine about how Naruto and Sasuke aren't in the story that much, even when Naruto and Sasuke are in the story kind of all the time. Up until the time skip of Two Blue Vortex when both Naruto and Sasuke are physically removed from the story, almost all of the most important fights in Boruto revolve around Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto and Sasuke fight Momoshiki. They fight Shin Uchiha. Naruto is the person who defeats Nue, and Naruto and Sasuke are the people that fight against Jigen and Ishiki. Really, when it boils down to it, the only characters that we see the new Team 7 battle against are Boro, the very tail end of Momoshiki, and like themselves. Hell, Naruto's the person who defeats Delta when she invades Konoha. How can you have a complaint about Naruto not being present in his story when he is literally more present than he should be? Now I get what the gripe is. The gripe is that Naruto's portrayed as a bad dad. He's too busy with the village to be a present father for Himawari or Boruto. But the author continues to elaborate on this point by saying Naruto sometimes feels like an obstacle to the new cast's relevance rather than the culmination of the franchise's emotional core. When the plot requires higher stakes, the story tends to lean on brute force threats that remove him from the board. Who has ever removed Boruto from the board outside of Kawaki? Naruto was the board in the battle against Ishiki. He was the only person who stood a chance, and everybody outside of Naruto and Sasuke stood no chance against fused Momoshiki. The only reason Boruto was involved in that fight whatsoever is because of his natural ability to incorporate lightning release into a Rasengan. Yeah, obviously the loss of Kurama makes Naruto substantially weaker, but is also technically not involved in any fight after losing Kurama. But apparently, according to this author, the Hokage's symbolic gravity gets softened into a busy dad image. It's an awkward trade that makes the franchise's most iconic position feel smaller than it should. And this is just another prime example of this author missing the point of the time period that Boruto takes place in, because they talk about how the Hokage should have importance and be the great protector of the village. But like that completely ignores the fact that A, we're in an era of peace, and B, we're only in that era of peace because Naruto exists. Naruto is nuclear deterrence in the ninja world. But even if you want to say that he should be the protector of Konoha, he literally is. He goes alongside all the other Kage to battle against Momoshiki and wins. He puts himself on the front lines in a battle against the most powerful alien they've ever seen for one citizen in Konoha, and that one citizen was Kawaki. He doesn't send anybody else. He knows he's outmatched, and yet he still throws himself into the fire. Every scenario where Naruto could be the protector you want him to be, he is. And every Hokage we've ever seen has been absurdly busy. Whether it was Kakashi, Tsunade, Minato, or Hiruzen, every single one of them has perpetually been drowning in paperwork. So why would that change with Naruto? Well, the list keeps going, unfortunately, as the next point is that the Hyuga legacy gets overshadowed when it should be thriving. See, according to this author, the Hyuga clan held enormous unfulfilled potential in Naruto. The Byakugan, the internal hierarchy, and the curse seal system hinted at deeper stories about control, identity, and reform. Boruto had the perfect opportunity to expand that legacy through Boruto and Himawari, both carrying Hyuga blood in an era of peace. Instead, the sequel franchise shifts its obsession towards newer, flashier eye powers tied to alien ancestry, which I guess is probably in reference to the Tenseigan? You know, the upgrade to the Byakugan that people have been clamoring for 20 or so years. But he goes on to say that the Byakugan fades into the background of a story that arguably should be obsessed with what the Hyuga represent in a modernized shinobi world. The Hyuga were an ideal lens for exploring how old clan systems adapt to peace. The sequel's choice to let that angle drift makes the world feel less textured. A major pillar of Naruto's social structure becomes a footnote in a story that could have used that political depth. And like, listen, this is actually not a terrible point. The Hyuga could play a bigger role in Boruto. Both Boruto and Himawari are Hyugas, and Hinata, who is the mother of both of those Hyugas, is the head of the Hyuga clan. Yes, we see Boruto and Himawari training in the Gentle Fist. However, Boruto doesn't have a Byakugan, and while Himawari does awaken to the Byakugan, her control of the Byakugan isn't all that great, considering the fact that in part 1 of Boruto, which I'm pretty sure is all this guy has seen, she's like 9 years old. But yes, I actually do agree here that it would have been cooler to see more from the modern day representation of the Hyuga clan. How is Hinata as a leader? Is the caste system still in play? Was the entire new generation of the side family branded with curse seals when Boruto was born? It would be cool to see more from the Hyuga clan, so we agree here. And unfortunately for those of you who want to see me angry, I kind of agree with the next point. Because the next point is Orochimaru's redemption softens Naruto's moral stakes. Now this isn't necessarily a problem of Boruto and rather a problem of Naruto as a franchise, or maybe even just Naruto as a person. But the author goes on to say that Orochimaru Naruto was not just a villain. The evil Sannin was a symbol of unchecked ambition and human experimentation. Orochimaru's crimes shaped entire Naruto arcs and traumatized multiple generations of characters. Boruto reintroduces him in a strangely normalized role. The story assumes that time and peace are enough to smooth over catastrophic moral damage. Orochimaru's modern presence can be entertaining, but the lack of serious reckoning creates tonal whiplash. And while I wouldn't say that Orochimaru is introduced in any kind of normalized role, they're literally locked down in their laboratory and under constant Jonin observation, and the only real reason that they're able to operate within the confines of Konoha is the promise that they use their scientific mind for good, which obviously they did with the creation of Mitsuki, who's now one of Konoha's strongest defenders. However, yes, it is weird how easily and how quickly Orochimaru was forgiven. But what's important to note here is that one of the only reasons that the Fourth Great Shinobi World War was won is Orochimaru. Specifically, Orochimaru using Edo Tensei to bring the 4 dead Hokage back to life. And yeah, at the end of the day, is it kind of Operation Paperclippy to make Orochimaru Konoha's greatest scientific mind after the conclusion of the Fourth Great Shinobi World War? 100%. But after a time where the Otsutsuki's presence had been made aware to everybody on Earth, basically, unfortunately, Konoha was kind of hard-pressed to try and find some minds that would be able to counteract the technologies of said Otsutsuki's. Orochimaru is a necessary evil in a world that needs scientific advancement. And thus when the author said a Naruto character who once embodied the franchise's darkest warnings now feels like a tolerated eccentric, that's because that is essentially what Orochimaru is. A bad guy fighting for a good cause. But I do agree when they say, but that narrative rarely explores what forgiveness costs, or what this says about justice in the shinobi system. When a villain that huge is integrated without enough weight, Naruto's original moral architecture starts to feel like it mattered less than the fans were led to believe. And that part I don't necessarily agree with. Naruto has very rarely had any moral architecture. As long as you're willing to say sorry and fight for the side of the good guys, Naruto would forgive you in a heartbeat. And that's exactly what Orochimaru did. And therefore Orochimaru being allowed to live and continue working at their goal of uncovering all of the jutsu in the world actually thematically kind of tracks with Naruto. So to say that it doesn't is kind of actually, to me, a misunderstanding of Naruto's character. However, unfortunately, after that point, the agreements go away. Because the next point that this author tried to use to highlight how Boruto is ruining Naruto's legacy, that Sasuke's redemption gets flattened into a simplified family trauma archetype. Now, what does that mean? Great question. Let me tell you. Apparently, according to this author, Sasuke Uchiha's arc was one of Naruto's biggest emotional investments. The great Uchiha's fall was deeply tied to systematic cruelty, grief, and manipulation. Sasuke's redemption was a hard-earned commitment to protect the world he once wanted to burn. Boruto still grants Sasuke moments of greatness, but compresses him into a distant mentor and absent father template. Sasuke is a great character who should embody the cost of history and discipline required to live with guilt. Once again, ding ding ding, we're missing the point. Why do you think Sasuke commits himself to being such a hardcore silent protector of Konoha? Do you think Sasuke doesn't want to be with his family, doesn't want to be with Sakura, doesn't want to see Sarada grow up? No, he wants all of those things, and that's a point that's hammered home multiple times. However, the reason that Sasuke lives outside on the boundaries of every single dimension trying to hunt down the Otsutsuki is because he's committing his life to paying back the sins that he committed in Naruto. He is a walking testament to living with guilt, and that guilt forces him to be an absentee mentor and father. Sarada asks Sakura time and time again why Sasuke isn't around, and Sakura always confirms to her that her father is out doing incredibly important things, and he is, which is what makes the second part of this point so confusing. As the author said, when that complexity gets reduced to household misunderstandings, the legacy feels smaller. The conflict with Sarada has emotional value, but the writing sometimes leans too heavily on bad dad beats instead of continuing the complexity of his post-war identity. But the story is told through the perspective of the next generation. Of course, Sarada, who's a child, would misinterpret what Sasuke being out there protecting Konoha from the shadows truly means. A large talking point of Sarada's growth is her realizing that Sasuke wasn't selfish, he was actually acting selflessly by not being around. Of course she wants her father to be around. Of course she wants one-on-one time with him, but she has to realize that her father is doing important work, and that important work can only be done by him. But he says that the issue is that Boruto occasionally treats his struggles with family closeness as his main defining trait, rather than one-dimensional mention of a much heavier redemption story. But like, that's the point. We are supposed to see Sasuke torn between his duty to his family and his duty to his village. A conflict that's supposed to mirror Itachi during Sasuke's childhood, trying to balance being in Sasuke's life, but also being an incredibly important member of the Anbu Black Ops. And if you're not reading Boruto with your listening ears on, these are the kind of things you're gonna miss. But apparently this author also wasn't reading Naruto with his listening ears on, because the next point he makes is that the ninja rank system stops feeling like a core world's mechanic. Yeah, why do you think that is? I will give you 3 guesses. Do we think maybe it's because the ninja rank system was specifically created to stop children from going to war and we're currently in an era of peace? Of course, Naruto treated the rank system as a meaningful social structure. That's because during the era of Naruto, the Chunin exams existed explicitly to make sure that genin weren't sent to war. But in an era where war doesn't exist, of course the shinobi rank system isn't gonna matter as much. What's wild is that he kind of acknowledges this, as he goes on to say that the Chunin exams in particular were iconic because they showed how war shapes childhood and how survival can contradict morality. So we're acknowledging the fact that Naruto's Chunin exams were specifically put in place to get children used to the concept of war. Something that Konoha no longer has to do, A, because they're in an era of peace, and B, because they were sending kids to their death. But he goes on to say that moving up the ladder meant something for identity and status. Boruto revisits the exam, but the rank system no longer feels like an engine for the world. It's a nod to tradition rather than a shaping force. And yeah, that's exactly the point. The only reason they're doing the Chunin exams is because they've done them for years. But kids don't really need to be Chunins anymore because war no longer exists. But then we wander even further from the point as we say that Boruto's focus is so locked into high-level threats that institutional life often feels decorative. This matters because the world loses depth when its rules become optional. The ninja villages were once defined by systems that cause pressure and conflict. When those systems fade into the background, the world starts to feel like a stage built only for the current villain. At this point, that I would like to ask the crowd, what are Naruto and Sasuke's ninja ranks? Oh wait, do you have the answer? It's genin. They're both genin. I can guarantee you that it wasn't Boruto that committed themselves to abandoning the shinobi rank system. The second Chunin exams that happens in Naruto is technically a filler arc. Doesn't happen in the manga. So this point is stupid. Not as stupid as our 10th and final point, which says that Naruto's human-centered war themes get replaced by alien destiny. And it's like, yeah, man, that's the point. But let's see what they have to say. At its heart, Naruto was about human pain. The best antagonists were shaped by loss and systemic failure. The story argued that violence is inherent, not just biologically, but emotionally and politically. That framework gave the franchise its strongest moral weight. Boruto shifts the axis towards alien gods, genetic fate, and cosmic cycle. This kind of escalation can work, but it often dilutes the grounded political drama that made Naruto resonate. It's at this point that I'd like to remind you that earlier in this very same article, you complained about the fact that Boruto somehow diminishes the work that Naruto did to bring about worldwide peace. But if Boruto was about human-centered war themes, then Naruto wouldn't have done a very good job, would he have? But don't worry, they have more to their point here, I guess, when they say when non-human forces define the central conflict, it becomes harder to explore how ninja villages, clans, and policies create suffering. Boruto sometimes tried to merge the two approaches, but the balance often tilts towards spectacle. The Naruto's franchise's most powerful statements once was that systems make monsters. When destiny and alien mechanics dominate Boruto's narrative, that original truth starts to fade. But if the systems that exist that Naruto set up still create monsters, then we've reached a point where Naruto is no longer the child of prophecy and has not brought world peace. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. Do you want Boruto to build on the peace that Naruto created, or do you want war themes in Boruto? Because those cannot exist simultaneously. Fortunately for us, this list is over. CBR never fails to make an article that just drives me into visceral rage. I don't get how people can know as much about Naruto as they know and yet know nothing about Naruto. This was infuriating. But if you guys agree with any of the points made in this article or any of the points made in this video, let me know down in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, excuse me, I'm gonna go work out this ankle.